Question number 4, Honourable Annette King.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question's to the Minister of Health. Does he stand by all his answers to oral question 9 from yesterday?
Honourable Tony Ryle.
Mr Speaker, yes, within the context they were given, and in particular that a record 23,000 patients received orthopaedic treatment in the last year.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Honourable Annette
Well,
King.
in light of his answer yesterday that there are, quote, 2 separate figures relating to patients waiting for surgery, those on a waiting list at a certain date, and those, quote, who did not even get on a list, end quote, can he inform the House how disabled and sick a patient must be before they can get on the official waiting list?
Honourable Tony Ryle.
Mr Speaker, that's a clinical decision that would be made by the various clinicians who are assessing those patients. What I can tell the member, though, is that in the last, and thank you for the opportunity to be able to say this, in the last 5 years we've provided 40,000 more elective operations this year compared to 5 years ago. That's a really significant achievement.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Honourable Annette King.
As he sets the level of funding DHBs receive, so therefore influence the priorities they implement, does he believe a patient who suffers the pain of bone graunching on bone and is forced to climb stairs on his hands and knees sounds sick enough to get on his official waiting list for surgery?
Honourable Tony Ryle.
Mr Speaker, first thing I'd say, if that member was to bring that case to me, I would look into it. It's better to help patients than use them. And on the second issue of funding, this government has put in an average of $500 million a year extra into the health service, millions more into elective surgery. And what's interesting about all these questions is the opposition parties have been promising to cut back on elective surgery.
Supplementary, that's not true either.
Yeah. Supplementary question, Melissa Lee.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.
I didn't hear it. Order.
Supplementary question
Order.
To the Minister.
Order. I've called Melissa Lee. By the sound of it, there was an interjection which I didn't hear. If a member took objection, then stand and raise that objection to me. I've called Melissa Lee.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister, what reports has he received confirming that in June 2005 there were around 31,000 patients booked in for assessments or surgery waiting over 6 months? And what reports has he seen of surgeons' views as to what happened to these patients?
Mr Speaker,
Tony Ryle.
An independent review by the Office of the Auditor-General confirmed that in June 2005 around 30,000 patients were waiting over 6 months. And I've seen many other reports that around 30,000 patients were summarily removed from these lists soon after this by government edict. Amongst these were a report of 74 of the Canterbury District Health Board's 80 surgeons signing a letter condemning Labour's waiting list cull of 5,000 patients off Canterbury's list.
Order, order, order. That answer is sufficient.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Order.
Supplementary question.
Order. Supplement.
He's only
order.
been there 5 years.
Order. Supplementary question, Honourable Annette.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Does a patient who was dumped from the waiting list earlier this year and now takes at least 8 painkillers a day, who cannot sit without wincing and uses crutches to get about, sounds sick enough to get on his official waiting list after 5 years of his stewardship?
Honourable Tony Ryle.
Mr Speaker, if the member is referring to the case that was in the Christchurch press a few days ago, it's my understanding that that person was not on a waiting list, so the claim is not valid. However, that patient is being considered by the Canterbury District Health Board. But the great news in Canterbury, of course, is that in the last 5 years at the Canterbury District Health Board, we've increased elective surgery by 48%. compared to a 13% cut under Annette King.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker. Does a
Supplementary question, the Honourable Annette King.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Does a patient who has lost the ability to stand, whose GP can no longer manage his pain, and he's likely to go into a wheelchair, forcing him to sell his home, sound sick enough to get on his official waiting list, or does he have to stay on the hidden list and remain just one of the Minister's figures?
Honourable Tony
Mr
Ryle.
Speaker, let me refute this straight away. There is no hidden list. That is about as reliable as Annette King's Official Information Act request, where all the numbers were where the number was inexplicably changed.
Order, Mr Speaker.
Order.
Mr.
Point of
Speaker.
order. Honourable Annette King.
I wish to table two documents, Mr Speaker, in light of the Minister's claiming yesterday that I have misrepresented the facts.
Describe
The first is a letter from the Waikato DHB stating that 376 patients were denied surgery and sent back to their GPs because they could not manage their surgery in 6 months.
That is adequately described. The second document, please.
And the second one is a letter from Mid-Central DHB stating 161 patients were denied surgery and sent back to their GP.
I will put the leave for those two letters, one from the Waikato District Health, one from Mid-Central. Is there any objection to those two letters being tabled? There is none. They can be tabled. Point of order. Honourable Annette
Mr
King.
Speaker, I seek leave to table an editorial from a small provincial paper.
Order.
So obviously not
Member,
widely read.
resume her seat. If members want to search that, they can find it for themselves. Question number 5. Order. Question number 5, Dr. Jan Yang.
Mr. Speaker.